All right, so Joe Haggerty, NBC Sports Boston Bruins insider, here with the Boston Globe's Kevin, Paul Dupont, and Dupes. What do you think? I mean, my gut says that the league still wants to have some kind of playoff, some kind of, finale to this season, some kind of end conclusion to what we've already had to kind of put it to bed and move on to hopefully a full year next year. But, where do you see this playing out in the great unknown that we have right now because of the coronavirus outbreak?
Personally, Hags, I don't see it playing out. I think it's over. I felt when it got to the weekend of March 26, 27, 28, that if they didn't see a clear path, and the clear path would have to be what the virus is dictating, what the government and the politics and the health professionals are all, that whole porridge of stuff, because this is beyond what Bettman wants or what Silver wants or any of them. The virus is dictating. Here we are today, as you and I are talking, however many days, almost 30 days past the postponement of the season.
Yep.
If the cup were handed out in mid-June, we're in mid-July now in terms of where players are, in terms of conditioning, a desire to get back, all of that. So there's a whole lot of factors here. We haven't even touched on the money of it, but the practicalities every hour become less in my mind. And I've heard a whole lot of contingencies about neutral sites in, Manchester, New Hampshire, and Fargo, North Dakota, and somewhere in Toronto, somewhere in Cal. And what I get back to on all these contingencies is, okay, so enough local governments have said we can have gatherings. We know that's not even conceivable in Massachusetts until the start of May 4th, I think.
Yeah.
All right, so we get enough places that are cool spots versus hot spots in terms of the virus. Now we've got players going there in whatever number, still at risk of catching the virus and bringing it home to spouse and children. Who wants to do that? I can't believe anybody. I would hope no one would want to do that. So I don't see all these theories are fun and yes, I want my binky back too. Right?
Don't we all?
We all want it. I want to get out of the house so bad. I know this looks like luxury digs behind me, but I want to get out. I want to
get a nice book collection back there, Dupes.
I want to talk to people, right? I want to drink after the game, something. But
I mean, the only realistic scenario at any level, and obviously this goes into, everything going right, the social distancing, flattening the curve, the numbers over the next few weeks, month, really, showing that we're going in the right direction and that it's going to dissipate or slow down in the hotspot areas. But if it did come back, it would have to be over the summer in July and August. I think it would have to be empty arenas. I don't think there's any way you could have fans there, and you would have to test everybody that was going to these places. While the playoffs were going on, they'd have to be secluded from everybody, family included, when they were playing, to make sure that nobody in the league that was on the ice or coaches or whatever, caught it and then transmitted it to everybody else. So you're basically talking about quarantining the players for 2 months while the playoffs were going on. And then, going back maybe to business as usual after a couple month break and awarding it up at the end of August. I mean, it goes against everything that you and I think of as normal as, hockey journalists. I think there is somewhat of a path there if they do want to put a cap on this season, but there are so many hoops they're going to have to go through. And as you referenced, you wonder, where's the money going to be at if there's no fans paying tickets and it's a made for TV event, these entire playoffs, 2 months of playoff games with nobody buying tickets and going to the games.
And all of it so they don't put an asterisk at the end of the 2019-20 season, right?
Right.
So forget just about, as you framed it, normal, if you will, normal standard hockey operating procedure. How about just logic? There's no logic in any of this in terms of, in so many pieces. We didn't touch on the risk of injury, a guy coming back after 6 or 8 weeks. Now, right, as we know, they do something to keep up their aerobics. I'm sure many of them are multimillionaires now. They've got equipment to, keep up their muscles, keep up their tone, keep a general shape. But we know that's not playing shape. That's not playing conditions. We've listened.
Almost none of these guys are on the ice.
Right. Right. Maybe there's the odd few who've got that kind of money. They can rent a building and go in it themselves. But again, there's just nothing. So the forces at play here are, realistically, nothing could happen until the start of May. And then they've got to decide, they're still deciding, what about the final 15% of the regular season schedule? In my mind, that's gone. But they haven't relinquished that yet either. So would they do some bastardized form? Because that's real money. That's 15% of the schedule. Most of the teams already have that in the bank. So their reluctance, first and foremost right now, is dealing with the abhorrent thought that they might have to give back 15%. Mm-hmm. That's a tough one for anybody to swallow. So there's that 15% issue there at the front end. At the back end, there's the continually stated desire that they'll start training camps on time as of mid-September. So can't do anything until May, early May, at the very earliest, and you want to do something at the middle, early to mid-September. And frankly, they're harping on that because they know they're going to have to give up the 15%. So they already know they can't be made whole for 1920. So they're adamant about 2021 because they know they have to have those dollars. So all of this is a long way of saying they're dealing with a very, very short window here. And then if you deal just in let's say, which isn't going to happen, the virus magically goes away, as we were told by somebody recently, that it would just magically go away, right? That's not going to happen either. It's not magically going away. In fact,
right.
What we're talking about is that it'll magically come back later in the year in a second wave. So there's a whole lot of things at play here. All of them, frankly, as much as I love the sport, and I've spent 40 years chronicling a small chunk of rubber, all of it's more important than the game. All of it.
I mean, I guess the silver lining when it comes to the NHL as opposed to these other sports is that they've got more practice with work stoppages, with shoehorning games into weird schedules, with rolling with the punches of whether it's the Olympics, whether it was the lockout in 2013. You know, that conceivably you could have a playoff in July and August. I mean, the ice would be terrible. As you mentioned, you'd be ramping up players probably over a week or two when they hadn't skated in months. You know, there's so many things that would be mitigating factors that would make it like nothing we've ever seen before when it comes to the playoff hockey. You would take September and October off, have the 2-month break, if you will, because you're going to have something for players. And then you start maybe in the middle of November and you have something close to an 82-game schedule. I think there's a way to do it, potentially. But as you said, you know, everybody's expecting a second wave of this virus. That's what experts are talking about. What if you try to ramp up for the season in November and all of a sudden it's hitting again and you've got to stop again? And you know, there's so many unknown factors as we deal with this that it's hard for even the people in the league offices to pin down exactly what's going to happen going forward. You have to have, you know, miles of contingency plans in place because of the unknown.
Right. So you can set up all these hoops and you can think you're running through them. And again, Mother Nature and the virus will dictate here in terms of what you can or cannot do. To me, the logical thing to do, and logic could go out the door because it boomerangs back, is essentially to resume this season in September or October and deal with a 40-game schedule for the next season. So you finish this one up, you get to crown your champion, you shut down the league for 3 weeks, start training camps for the teams that weren't involved in the playoffs. Then you've got to run free agency. You've got to sign players. And to me, that's probably the best case scenario, is basically cut this out, toll it all forward, start anew right where you left off, and deal with a 40-game schedule. And you could do all that. Probably would work, but virus might not allow you.
And then when it's all over, the teams will get to deal with the dropped salary cap because of all the regular season games that they chopped off at the end of this season if they don't resume, or if, you know,
chopped off here
right to the playoffs,
or truncated going forward, right? You're only dealing with, so you'd have to deal with and then guaranteed contracts, so the player's going to be willing to take half of what their cap is. I think in the end here, as I've thought here since the end of March, it's over.